What they do, what it is, this is Orion, aka Brass Balls, bringing you another installment of Deep Dive Tape Stash. And before we take this deep dive right outside the Miami coast, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Orion Hip Hop, where you can peep previous episodes of Deep Dive Tape Stash, along with dope music from yours truly, remixes, and obscure hip hop you may or may not have ever heard. So, with that said, get your bathing suits on. We're about to take this dive. This is not a single as I usually do when I do these deep dives. I'm usually reviewing singles because it's a format I feel that is long been overlooked and one of the very last treasures that are harder and harder to find at thrift stores and swap meets, garage sales and all that. But this time around, I'm doing a whole album, and this is an album that was released in 1991 from Cut It Up Def, and this is a label that was based out of Broward County, South Florida, with a lot of Miami ties within it. So Miami Bass Jams is a tape that has 14 tracks on it. The main guy putting this whole thing together goes by the name of Jock D. He is a DJ slash producer slash MC. Jock D is somebody who was actually part of a dope duo called Them Two with a homie by the name of Boogie Waters. There's actually a documentary you could peep on their album Endless Journey, and you know everything that went into that album. Them Two was really on some traditional hip hop thing, not really on the Miami bass thing. But Jock D and Boogie Waters were a duo that also put out Gods of Quad, which is very much on the bass tip. Now, I have a love for bass music because I'm from down here, because I'm from the bottom. I feel it's a subgenre in hip-hop that often gets overlooked, and even in its era, it was kind of seen as a novelty in most people's eyes. And, you know, Miami bass very well may have predated gangsta rap just by a few months or so. But it may have been one of the first subgenres in hip-hop, and it doesn't really get as much credit as it's due. Whenever people think of Miami bass, they only think of Luke, Two Life Crew, you know, and a handful of others. But there was a lot of artists, you know, waving that bass flag. And that's what we're going to get into, because a lot of those artists were on this compilation itself, unsung heroes, if you will. The first track on this compilation is Party Time with Jock D and a guy by the name of Jealous J. Now, you may or may not know this, but Jealous J went on to be a very prolific producer by the name of Jim Johnson. Jim Johnson is accredited with a lot of production, from The Outsiders to Trick Daddy, Pitbull, Twista, T.I., Lil Wayne at the height of Lil Wayne's career, and even Eminem. So Jim Johnson is a platinum producer who went on to do great things, but on this song, Party Time, you can hear him actually rapping. Jock D and Jim Johnson go way back. There's a great documentary called The Bass That Ate Miami that really touches on all of this history. Jim Johnson is in that documentary, as well as Jock D, breaking down a lot of what that bass era consisted of. You know, shout out to my dog Debonair. I have a podcast, episode that I did with him, that we go into that bass history as well. I think it's one of the only episodes I have in my podcast with WDDH Radio where I really take a dive into bass music and that whole history. Like I said, this project was spearheaded by Jock D, so shout out to him. One of the tracks on this album is called Cuties by Latin and Lethal. I dig this track, but I think I dig it more so because shout out to the homie Vibe Captain. He's one of the dudes rapping on this. This was an early rap group he was on with doing at that time. And like I said, a lot of the MCs on this, not a lot, I would say some of these MCs, including Vibe Captain specifically, did not just do bass music. Vibe Captain has a lot of music out there where it's traditional hip hop. I want to shout out one of his projects, Spitco, that was really dope as well, that came out years after this, of course, and it's a really dope project. You know, other tracks on this that I really like, MC Gemini with Miami Skeezer is a pretty dope track. 2BMF, which I would assume is Two Bad Motherfuckers, we can get together is dope. It kind of gives me the vibe of being at a mall, maybe Westland Mall back in the day or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying? The tracks on this pretty much echo a lot of the things that were on brand when it comes to bass music. So you got a lot of the 808 patterns that you're used to hearing, a lot of DJ cutting up, and this is one of the things that's overlooked with bass music. I think bass music was very DJ friendly. It's electronic music at the end of the day, and when it comes to hip hop, I'm surprised like the Source magazine's vibe, would shit on bass music a lot of times, but it really gave DJs a big voice in it with the productions and everything. There's an arpeggiated keys that you constantly hear, and that is actually a sample from a group by the name of Willis Den Dodgers. They have a track called Jive Rhythm Tracks, and shout out to my dog Apex UB, the underboss, who was a DJ coming up in the 80s and early 90s, and he's the one that I had to ask, like, what is this arpeggiated key work thing that I'm hearing in all these bass tracks, and all these different mixes, and he's the one that put me on to Jive Rhythm Tracks 122. This was a record that the Willis Den Dodgers put out, and it was made for DJs to sample and mix with, and this was probably the most popular one. Basically, this track, to me, is what synthetic substitute drum break is to the traditional hip hop tracks. When I think of bass, the bass music era, I think of Kraftwerk, and I think Trans Euro Express is to bass music what Impeach the President break is to traditional hip hop sample techniques. You feel me? So yeah, man, it's a dope tape to have. I'm glad that I have it in my collection. The tape, however, I had lost, but I kept the cover art, so I decided to transfer everything onto this other white tape that I had, just so that I could at least have a tape in there. So, but yeah, man, I had this tape at one point, and I don't know how it got lost, but luckily I still had the cover art. So your boy, I made up for it as best as I could. I love the cover art on this too, man. I love the lettering for Miami Bass Jams. I tried to look in the liner notes to see if they gave credit to any graffiti artists that did that, or any of their homeboys that may have done that or whatever. But I couldn't find anything. Once again, the artists on this are Broward, Dade County cats. This was kind of a mesh of both counties, so I think that's something really special about this particular bass release. However, you did have that cross-pollination going on within South Florida with other acts, whether they were from, Jam Pony Express and Two Life Crew and all these different acts that may have been from Broward, may have been from Dade, and collabing together or whatnot. The furthest that I could think of actually is the dynamic duo DJ Magic Mike and Madness. Them two brothers, Magic Mike being from Orlando, Madness being from Carroll City. So them brothers getting together was kind of cool to see that cross-pollination. Rest in peace to Madness. Dope find. Glad I got it. You should too. You should look into this if you're a bass head. This is a project that's a must listen for sure. Definitely of that 1991 era. Back in that time frame, you were either an MC that did traditional hip hop, or you did bass music, and very rare that somebody would be doing bass music and traditional hip-hop. But as I mentioned, Boogie Waters, Vibe Captain, Jock D, these cats did exist. They were out there. So, go peep this. Dope to add in the collection. I think it's important that I also add, I just released this album, Free Bass. This is the second installment of my bass series. And my music is not bass music, but bass music, given that I'm from down south, I'm very much influenced by it. It's in the DNA of my code as an MC, and that's why I did it. The beats on my project are quote-unquote traditional hip-hop, but all of the bass knocks on it. I always make sure the bass knocks on my projects, and that all stems from me being a Miami down south cat and needing that bass to quad and knock properly, even if it's a quote-unquote boom bap traditional rap type track. So shameless plug, go peep Free Bass out. Brass and Silver Slugs, all my peoples that is on the album. Shout out to all of y'all. Shout out to everybody supporting. Nothing but love. Hope you enjoyed this one. Peace.